Welcome to Coffee Chat time, and we're going to be looking at effective explicit teaching review with a vocabulary focus. Gail's going to take the lead with literacy, but she's also going to show us how we can do this because it's so important for students to understand the vocabulary in every subject. Yeah. So fantastic for English as a second language students, I know, but all students will benefit from this, as I'm sure you will appreciate. So I'll show you the screen.
Oh, that's great, Linnell, thanks. Okay, there we are. So yeah, we're going to be talking about teaching, review and explicit teaching of key vocabulary as a high impact strategy. And remember, this sits within our explicit teaching review section. This is the fourth session we've had on this, and it's going to be talking about, I guess, mostly about previous lesson, but also about prior knowledge and experiences. And we'll go into that more on Thursday when we tease this out further. First of all, let's have a bit of fun and show that, you know, review can be fun. And Linnell hasn't seen these in advance, so we'll see if we'll pause and see if she can answer these two examples, and maybe you can think if you can answer these two examples. So a scoundrel or someone who is a bit naughty, using those two images. Can you think what that might be?
I think that's a rat bag.
It is a rat bag. And the kids love doing these sorts of things. They actually, sometimes kids can be great at making these up for compound words because it doesn't really match. The meaning doesn't match the visuals at all. And that's one of the key points. That's what's making it fun. So what about something that happens when you get older, or maybe when you're on holidays? Can you think what the second word, compound word, or little compound phrase? It's not a compound word, but it's a phrase.
Yes, yeah, it's a time flies.
Time flies, exactly. So we should have lots of fun with vocabulary, lots of fun, like Linnell's talked about her warm-ups, and they're fun. We can make these fun. I think there's a bit of a misconception out there that review or doing something again can be really boring for children, for students. It's up to the teacher to make it fun. That's your job. You're the professional, you're the adult. You can either make them love it or hate it, depending on your tone and the way you present.
So how motivating is success?
Yeah. You know, ask children, give them a compound word and say, what visuals would go with that? I've tried in some of my materials to add some riddles and jokes. So, Linnell, without any prior prompting, this is a tricky one. It is a compound word. But what do you call a sleeping cow? One word. Have a think.
Sleeping cow. I need some brains trust.
Okay, I'll give you the answer. Get ready, because it's not what you're expecting, because it's a bulldozer.
Oh.
So can you see how that is teaching the relationships between words? And it's teaching the children that a synonym for sleeping is doze, synonym for cow is bull. These are the sorts of things that when we're reviewing words, we really want children to take on board. Because now that I've told you that, and you've probably groaned, because often teenage children groan when you use these dad jokes, because they are dad jokes. Sorry, dads out there, if any of you teaching dads are listening, but they are definitely dad jokes. Even though kids groan, they still sort of have a bit of a laugh inside, no matter what their age, because I saw Linnell have a little laugh at that, and they remember it. This helps them get this review or this joke from short-term to long-term memory. And I can't emphasize the importance of that enough.
That's right. Yeah.
This is about lots and lots of repetition. And while you may think it's boring, your children will actually, your students will love it. Even if parents are watching this, like your children will groan at your dad jokes all the time. but it will teach them so many different things that you don't realize. So highly encourage them. So now let's look a little bit about the different types of words that we might be teaching. You know, this is Isabel Beck's work, and many teachers are already familiar with this 3-tier approach. It really is important for us to distinguish between these different types of words. Most children have that tier 1. Some don't, particularly if they're from a non-English speaking background. They may have it in their first language, but not their second language. So that might be a way you might start to differentiate. What we would focus on are those tier 2 words that have multiple meanings across different curriculum areas, across different topics within a curriculum area. So you can think about the word measure, even the word environment, the classroom environment, as opposed to the general word environment, which is outside. We use words in different ways depending on the context.
That's right. And how confusing can that be for students, whether they're non-English speaking background or English speaking background?
Correct.
And I know from experience, especially, we can take words that in one subject and into mathematics, for example, or everyday language and into mathematics, and suddenly it means something quite different.
Correct.
And can set up for problems.
Lots of kids, students who might have an additional need like autism or Asperger's, they tend to take words very literally. So if you say, let's do our tables facts, they're liable to start looking at the tables, the desks, rather than understand that you're talking about the multiplication facts that we're going to be considering. That's just a really key example. It'd be interesting for us to find out the origin of that term, Linnell, in numeracy tables facts. I don't know.
There's actually plenty of maybe they're pure mathematicians who will say never, ever use it.
Okay. And yet lots of teachers do.
I know.
So it's something that, you know.
I feel that we have to address the fact that it exists, but it means multiplication facts. And there are plenty of teachers who will say, don't use it in my class.
Yep. But also it's just like the sleep and the doze. While I'm saying they're similar in meanings, they're actually different. If you think about the fine distinction between those two words.
That's right. There's little nuances.
Yeah. The joke is at the general level, not at the nuance level. And then we come to things that are very specific to content.
That's right.
So you probably wouldn't talk about isosceles in any other relationship, in other curriculum area other than maths, because it's an isosceles triangle. Okay. Whereas the word equilateral, for example, you might talk about that in other curriculum areas. So some words transfer and others don't. And that's one of the things that children need to start to understand. That's why they need deep knowledge of the words.
Yes. And we need to be aware as teachers, because we've said before, we're the experts, and we actually forget sometimes where students might be tripping up in this vocabulary. Right. And high school teachers particularly can forget that the students are coming up from primary, elementary, and they don't have all this jargon that you're super familiar with.
Yep.
But even, all through primary and elementary, we also need to be aware that we can be changing the meaning because we're teaching a particular subject and not realise that the children are lost.
And that leads into the next slide, which talks about what a word encounter is. So when Isabel Beck was doing the research, she was looking at word encounters, and they are only for successful learning episodes or opportunities. So if a child has a misconception or attaches the wrong meaning because they're using a different context, that doesn't count as a word encounter because it's an error. It's not a successful learning opportunity. Okay? And it varies for the different tiers of words.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a dog, most kids have a general idea of a dog and how it can vary in size and colour and all the breeds. Children have a lot of knowledge about that tier 1 word, but take a tier 2 word or a tier 3 word and put it in a different context, and they don't successfully understand the meaning.
But maybe a kelpie, for example.
Yep. They
might. I'm saying kelpie. What's a kelpie?
Yep. We might know it in Australia, but someone from another non-English speaking background might not know what it is. So if you look at the next piece of information, the thing I take away is the last number of encounters, the second quote. So I say to teachers that students need 12 encounters with each word.
And that's successful.
And that means successful understanding. So the message is teach fewer words and teach them in detail. Review them more and more and more. And we'll tease that out more on Thursday.
Yeah. So and that's why we're saying this, because this can be pushed into the review.
Yep.
And must be.
It has to be. When I've supported teachers, unless we know these words really, really well, we can't use them. We can't apply them. We can't, when we're reading a text, we can't understand that text because we haven't got the vocab. Yes. We can't then write about that text. We
didn't understand it.
Correct. We learn something about, I always use rainforests, but it could be about volcanoes. It could be about deserts. But if we don't have that vocabulary and know it really well, we can never write about it, because that's a whole different level of learning. So I think our time's probably pretty close to up.
I think it is, yep. So there's your reference list.
There's a few references, and on Thursday we'll tease this out more, and I'll have a reference for Isabel Beck's work.
Share us your reviews that you're doing, particularly around vocab this week. What's worked for you, some examples that have engaged students. And certainly be ready to ask your questions and share your wins, share your worries. Bye for now.
Bye for now. See you next time.